Let me show you how you can make evolving organic cinematic textures like these using whatever instruments you have laying around, from the recording, processing, and the final export. For this video, I'm going to be recording a violin, a trumpet, and this Irish bouzouki that I bought a couple of years ago traveling through Europe with my friends. Let's dive in. So I got my trusted WA-47 with me over here, and I'm going to start by recording the violin. And the way that I like to record these textures is to record them as close as I can to get as much of the bow noise and texture as possible. The first thing I'm going to start with is a very simple drone. Okay, so that's a very basic note. I did it once in the lower octave and once with the harmonics in the higher octave. Another type of recordings I like to do in these textures is to do longer notes but with some periodic swelling and ebbs and flows. So let's try that as well in D. A third type of notes I like to do as well is to do some tremolos, something that's a little bit more rhythmic. Then finally, I like to add some melodic flair to it, adding some trills and a few notes that could imply minor or major keys. So I'm just going to play around with that. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the violins. So now I'm going to make this a group, call this violin. For the trumpet, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to record some straight notes, some notes with a bit more swelling, and some with some melodic trills. Alright, that'll do for now. We'll just use that one take, and then I'll just do B, Z for bouzouki. Let's record a couple of textures with that as well in D. Okay, so now we have quite a few different things to play around with here. I don't want to go too crazy and give us a heck of an editing job, but this should do. Now, the first step is just to find our favorite takes that we want to use to build these textures. So I'm going to start with this violin. So that works for one take, and I know there's some higher octaves here too, so let's see. Cool, I'm going to take that and I'm going to add these together. I'm going to just splice them, something like that. Now I'm going to add the higher octave here. Sweet, so we have a nice little tonal bass there. Now let's go to the next take. So the more takes you do, the thicker and more dense and more ensemble-like the texture actually gets. Okay, so here I'll probably do this one, and what I like to do is just to extend them pretty far so I have quite a long journey to play with, and what I do then is just to splice them in a way where it kind of sounds natural. Just like that. Now you can't really tell that's being spliced too much. Let's go to the last one on the strings. Okay, so here we have two similar ones, but I like having as much variety as possible, so I'm gonna add both of these and maybe pan them a lot to the left and right, and then maybe add a delay to these. So I might do this while I'm editing, but I like to add some effects to make them a bit more interesting and bouncy, so I might add a ping pong delay to both of them. And then splice them together. So this one's a little bit choppy, so I'm gonna, use the first one. I might put those kind of far back. It's just another layer, so I might make a group, call this trill, and this is the trem, this is the swell. Cool, alright, so let's quickly go into the trumpet and find some usable notes in here as well. And what I like with these textures and when I record them, I try to make them as imperfect as possible. So I'm not trying to keep a perfect pitch the whole time. I like a little bit of fluctuations, something that makes it feel a little bit more alive. So here we have a couple of more melodic notes, and here we have a more steady pitch. Okay, so I might include this one a few times. This is more like the melodic layer. Alright, let's add in the final layer of the bouzouki. Alright, so I'm gonna add another layer. I can add this. So now I'm gonna start adding a little bit of reverb. I'll add some Valhalla room. Just gonna do a quick little processing of this. Make it really long. And this bouzouki, I want it to be really drenched out, like in the distance. And maybe I even want it to be auto-panned side to side a little bit, so it's moving. It's a great way to create some stereo movement. And sometimes on the strings I might add some soothe just to take out some of the harshness. It's not too bad right now, but sometimes it just makes it a little bit more smooth. And here too, say on these swells or the tremolo, I might want that to be auto-panned as well. Give it some more movement, maybe a slow one. I could take this string and introduce a lower octave as well. I could use a cello, but I could also kind of fake it with this. Could add some R bass just to, you know, enhance that low frequency. And I can see here that this frequency, like the fundamental, should be around 72. Yep. And now let's add a quick piano over here. Just see how it works in context. That's something. Maybe add just a little bit of reverb. So that sounds really nice. I think that's a really beautiful texture. So now that I've tested it and I like the way that it makes just a simple piano idea feel, I go to the next phase, which is actually trying to turn this into an asset I can reuse, because this is just one texture. And I'll show you how I take it from here into a usable asset. So the first thing, I like to export the full texture. So I might just, hit ARN, tonal, ambience, and then if there's a BPM involved with the rhythm, I'll add that in here. If not, I'll just add in, the key. So this is D major. It could have a name, I could call it, just mist, and then maybe a number if I'm making several variations. This is the first variation. So I'll just bounce that out. And then what I like to do is creating individual layers, essentially stems of this texture, so I can create different variations on the fly later, as well as a few different remixes of this texture. So I might just copy paste it a few times. I might do one variation without the trumpet, one variation without the brass at all, one variation without these tremolos and without these trills, and with these bouzouki's, and this one I might just take away. That sounds pretty nice. So then I can bounce that out as number, well, it's technically 3, and we can go to the second one after. And then I can just mess around, like take this down an octave. Let me take the tremolo out of here. Now I have a third variation. And then finally, what I like to do is to name these. So this is the low, this is the high. Then we have the trills. So I might select these and then select these individual tracks. And I'll bounce out the individual layers of, you know, this texture. So I want to make sure I hit selected tracks only, export, and then I call this mist stems, and I hit bounce. Okay, now that this is bounced out, you can drag them into any project file, either just as it is, as the full texture. Or you can start building your own based on the individual layers and stems that you bounced out. So I can take just the high octave of the strings, make that come in a little bit later, and then later in the track I might just want only the trumpets to come in, and then maybe later I want the bouzouki to come in here as well. So let's see what that sounds like. That works really well. So this way you can actually tailor the ambience based on how, you know, intimate or dense they actually want it, and you have all these assets to play around with later. So one more thing I want to show you as a little bonus tip before we end this tutorial is showing you how you can actually make this into playable instruments really quickly. You can use just the built-in samplers in your DAW, like in Ableton, and I might take this swell and, you know, boost the volume a little bit. So these moving tonal textures that you just did will create really nice interlocking kind of textures in your sampler when you start playing them. And another thing you can do is to open up, say, the Evenant engine, which you also can get in the link in description, and use that as a engine to host your sounds. So here I open up the Evenant engine, I open up one of the existing pads, and I just deleted the samples, and then you can drag them in here. So say I have the bouzouki, maybe I want the high octave strings as well, and maybe we want, yeah, just the one called swell. Let those in here, and then in the second layer I might add in the trumpet as well as the lower octave. And now I can use these layers, this filter, you know, these effects to shape the sound and create my own instrument. You can save these patches as well. So let's play. There's a couple of ways you can turn your new textures into playable instruments, and you can of course save these as patches and reuse them later and create your own personal library of textures that are unique to you. That's it for now. I hope this has been helpful, and if you want to get a bunch of textures I've made over the years, you can click the link in the description to check out the Compose from Master Tools. If there's anything else you guys want to see tutorials on or any breakdowns of, let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.